friends. I was sick of being stuck in the house, and so I thought I'd take a walk. And since we're out here, I figured I'd tell you a story as well. The story I want to tell you today is about courage. And before I tell this story to you, I want to talk about courage. When I was a kid, I remember asking my mom if adults ever got scared. And she told me they did. And sometimes if it was dark or they were alone, that they would get scared. Now, I didn't believe her because I had never seen an adult get scared. They couldn't seem to hear the monster under my bed, and they couldn't seem to tell that when the house creaked, it was the sound of footsteps coming to get me. I figured if I wanted to be an adult, I just could never feel fear. I had to be totally fearless. And so, one day, I went down into the basement of our house, where all the assembled terrors of my imagination were. All the monsters. And I stood in that creepy furnace room with my back to the furnace. And I knew that behind me were all the scary things. But I didn't let myself feel fear. I felt the fear come, but then I let it go through me and away from me. And when I was good and ready, and not because I was scared, but when I was good and ready, I started to walk back upstairs. And I walked so slowly, even though the monsters were nipping at my heels the whole time, because I wasn't scared of anything. Now, for a while, it seemed to work. I convinced myself that I was fearless, and I climbed all of the tall trees, and I stood on the edges of cliffs, and I chopped down trees with double-bitted axes. But then, my niece was born. And the first time I met her, her toes were each as big as a pencil eraser. And her neck was so weak she couldn't hold up her head on her own. And when my sister gave me her to hold, I held her the way that you'd hold a bomb. What would happen if I dropped her? Well, then I met my wife, and she's just as fearless as I am. And before, if I stood on the edge of a cliff, that was fine. But when she stands on the edge of a cliff, it makes me break out in a sweat. Now I've got 3 nieces and a nephew, and I can tell you that my mom was right. Adults do get scared, especially when it's dark and they're alone and there's nothing to do but worry about the ones they love. But being brave isn't about not feeling fear. It's the opposite. Being brave is what you do when you are afraid. And so, even though I worry about the people I love, I know that I can trust my sister to take care of my nieces and my nephew. I know that I can trust my parents to stay home during the pandemic. And I know I can trust that my wife knows which cliffs are safe to stand on. So, you see, if you do feel fear, that's okay. I hope that you can see it as an opportunity to be brave. Now, there's lots of people being brave right now. There's doctors in the hospital and nurses and all the people that work in the hospitals. They're being brave by helping people. But for those of us that are stuck at home, we can be brave by helping the people we love. You can maybe do chores when you're not asked, or say something nice to somebody that's cooped up with you. If you are afraid, that's okay. It's a chance to be brave. Now, here's that story I promised you. I wrote this story a long time ago, back before social distancing, for a girl who lived in Rochester, New York, but was about to move to a different city. We met at a museum where I had my typewriter. And she told me that she wasn't scared about moving, but that she was a little nervous about it. And so I wrote her this story, and it's called The Big Jar of Courage. In a jar on a shelf in her bedroom, the little girl kept her courage. She'd been saving up from each big dog she pet, from each tall tree she climbed, from each diving board that she sprang off of into the water. And the jar was nearly full. She was about to move to a new city and a new state, and this would have scared the girl, would have terrified her even. except that she knew that in that jar on the shelf, she had enough grade A, double strength, extra crispy courage to get her through everything that would happen. The movers came while she was at school, and they all had to sleep on the floor. And the girl wasn't scared because she knew that she had her jar of courage. The next day, they drove to the new state and the new house, and the girl wasn't scared, even though the neighbors had a big dog, because she knew she had her jar of courage. The day after that, she went to her new school for the first time, and she met her new friends. But she wasn't scared, even when they all climbed a tree together, because she knew she had her jar of courage. Now, when at last they finished unpacking, the box that had the girl's name on it was sticky on the bottom. The movers had been careless and had broken her jar of courage. Thought the little girl. And she wondered if that meant she should be afraid. But before she could quite get it figured out, one of her new friends called out her name from the street, and like a shot, she was out of the house to go play. That's the end of the story. Now, I hope that you're doing your best to stay safe during this difficult time. And remember, if you do feel fear, it's okay. That's a chance to be brave.